Professor Abul Hussam to give his keynote speech. Professor Abul Hussam.
Hello. Respected chair of this scientific seminar, Professor Chaudhry Yaqub Jamal, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. I'd like to thank Bangladesh Pediatric Association and this institution for arranging this scientific seminar. It's like coming back to this hall after 7 years, I think. I was here in 2008 giving a seminar on a topic which is just beginning to be studied in a scientific manner. So I'm kind of going to give you a report of the advances that we made on the material that is responsible for the sonar filter. You heard about sonar filter, but there is a material that we developed and we discovered. That material has been patented in many countries, and the material has been improved. So basically, this my talk will be on this material and overall what this material can do in comparison to other materials, and how we can develop a better filter for water filtration, and some of the results that we obtained for last many years. So I have been working on this topic since 1997, and now it's many years, and within a lifetime you really cannot work on too many things. So basically, since it works, so we want to know how it works, how we can improve on this material, how we can build a better filter and things like that. So I'm going to start. I have quite a number of slides, so I'll go over the slides relatively fast. Some of them are pictures on sonar filter, but most of it is basic scientific studies, and I think I'll try to convey the message as simple as possible. All right. Okay, potable water by definition means it has to be safe. So safe potable water is just re-emphasizing the potable part of the water. Innovation, that's what we have been doing for many years, and what are the expectations? You know that a fundamental material developed or fundamental science cannot be translated into practice. It takes a long time. I mean, to go from fundamental science into practice and for helping other people. All right, so this is what we have. We are living in this globe, and we only have 0.014% drinkable water. Okay, but you know, this amount of drinkable water is maintaining billions of population, so 0.014% is quite a lot. We have technologies to purify ocean water, land water, but that's not available to most of the population of the earth. Well, if you fast forward, if you zoom on Bangladesh, and just out of curiosity, I did that on 2009. I was writing this paper, and I was just going through Google Eye, and I found this is what we have in the, I think this is Shitalakha or Buriganga River, and you can see these huge industries. These are basically industries making apparels, and they're dying of the material contaminating the river. And you can clearly see the river water color. This is relatively clean water. This is polluted water, clean water, polluted water, and that dye is flowing through the river and killing a lot of things. It's contaminating the water to the extent that you cannot even purify this water for drinking. Well, these are the sources of drinking water: surface water, groundwater, and rainwater harvesting. Most of the population in Bangladesh is getting drinking water, potable water from groundwater. Less than 300 feet, more than 300 feet, or so on. But this is just one-time resource, because once you take out the groundwater, it is not recharged soon. I mean, it will take hundreds of years to recharge this groundwater to the extent that we can reuse it. So this is what we have, and surface water is now contaminated to the extent that we cannot use surface water. Either it is contaminated by industrial effluent or biochemical microorganisms. Okay, so the thing is, we have to filter water. It does not matter how you get your water, you have to filter water either at the source or at the sink. That means we have a tabletop filter. Most people, even in the USA and advanced country, they would like to buy a filter, even the water is clean, because that's what they think, that water is clean, but it's better if we filter it through a filter. So, what's the best thing to develop a filter? And I believe best thing to develop a small filter, not a large filter, because in countries like ours, it would be extremely difficult to supply a pipe water system through cities and ensuring that the water is clean. So in that case, if we have a tabletop unit, tabletop filter, and we can filter whenever we need it, would be best development. And that's what's my goal about developing filters. Now, if you look at the water that we drink most of the time, like we have bottled water, and I collect bottled water levels from different countries, and you can see what they say. Well, that's what we believe in. In the USA, I'd just like to mention this, in the USA the bottled water is not examined for any of the inorganic or toxic species. This is not required. Water is is considered as food and not controlled by FDA. So they just say that it is a food, so we have to know how many calories it has, fat and cholesterol, sodium, carbohydrate. Nobody is drinking water for fat and cholesterol. So this is a kind of a very interesting thing, and the Europeans are a little bit better, I guess, and Bangladesh is, I think, probably the best in this respect. They have all the things written on it. These are all required by EPA or Bangladesh institutions, that the contamination level should not exceed those. And you can see they measure cadmium, lead, nitrate, cyanide. That's very dangerous, cyanide and chloride and total dissolved solid. There is no information in Canadian bottled water. Well, you have seen this list. I don't want to go through the list, but the point of this list is drinking water should have some inorganic quality parameter. This is just a part of the list, and the list can grow depending on if you consider organic impurities, biochemical impurities, radioactive impurities, and so on. Now, in Bangladesh, for example, if you take groundwater and measure the concentration of these species, which is by EPA requirement that they have to be within these limits, World Health Organization, Bangladesh, and US EPA, then if I take out arsenic from the water, then the water is relatively clean, assuming that the water is also clean in terms of microorganisms, fungi, and other impurities. So, if you really want to do a very good job in terms of measuring impurities and water and make it potable, then you really have to measure concentration of asbestos, 13 metals, 25 pesticides, 130 other organic chemicals and radioactive species. Now, I'm sure this is not done in most countries like Bangladesh, India, or other countries. Then you have to total of 154 species, organic compounds, and so on. Then it has to be within that limit known to the country or the EPA or World Health Organization. Then you supply the water in whatever way you want to use it. But remember that water is reused. So this thing, this cycle is continuing, and a good water management system should have this kind of control over all the pollutants that we are putting into water. Well, in Bangladesh, these are the two primary sources, and I don't have the recent statistic, but within 1970 to 2000, there were 10 million tube wells. Now, this is 2016, and you can just think about extrapolate that number. So this is quite a number of tube wells, and there's no way one can measure arsenic concentration in these tube wells, or even once. That will take 200 years. Okay, so there could be some statistical measurements and extrapolating that to other tube wells, but there is no way we can supply clean potable water without tube well. Tube well is the groundwater, is the primary source of our potable water. 1997 we started working on it, first by measurement of arsenic and then by developing filtration system. Well, this information, I like to read it because this is probably the most important information published in Lancet 1976 by R. Levin. Now this information was completely overlooked by almost all World Bank, Bangladesh intellectuals, name it. They simply did not read this paper. Now, what is the information here? Now, it has been generally believed in Bangladesh that groundwater is relatively free of microorganisms and therefore fit for human consumption without treatment. However, the results of this study show clearly that all samples of tube well water in rural Bangladesh that were examined contain high counts of bacteria, zooplankton, and fungi. 1976 by R. Levin. The work was repeated in 2001 by a team of ICDDRB scientists led by Professor Rita Caldwell. Professor Rita Caldwell is the director of National Science Foundation, was the director of National Science Foundation, USA. And the result, this is the quotation from 2001. So you know that 1976 to 2001, I think no scientist in Bangladesh read about these two articles. If we did, and if we acted on it, we could have prevented the present arsenic crisis. So tube well water is not really safe. That's what proven in 76, proven in 2001. You can measure it again. I think you might get the same result. Well, a lot of things happened after that. In 2004, US BGS, British Geological Survey, they did some survey on water quality, and they found they did not examine groundwater for arsenic. So they were sued by a group in Britain, and that's the result. Scientists not to blame for arsenic error. The error was done by the British Geological Survey. Bangladesh Geological Survey did not have the means to test for arsenic at that time, but by then millions of people are affected by arsenic poisoning, and 20,000 Bangladeshis could be dying every year from cancer caused by arsenic. That was published in New Scientist in 2004. So these are the facts. The fact is also is that sometime when we knew that there was arsenic crisis, the test was also 50% incorrect. You can see that also test failures in Bangladesh. So these are the facts, and facts are relatively old, and we are still in the same place that we were in 1976 probably. So has not improved except the awareness that there is arsenic in drinking water. I'll not go over this. You know that. I'd just like to mention that US EPA limit is 10 microgram per liter. WHO guideline is 10 microgram per liter, we call it parts per billion. Bangladesh limit is still 50 microgram per liter. So, and Canada is 5 microgram per liter, Japan is 2 microgram per liter. So it will depend on the technology of water purification. They can purify water to the extent that the water should not have more than 2 microgram per liter. Okay, this is the scenario of Bangladesh at this point. Just to mention here some of the points here. 10 million tubules from 1940. After 1970, UNICEF started sinking in tubules, and that's when we started to get arsenic in our water. The arsenic is geogenic in the sense it's in water. This is not human-made catastrophe or human-made poisoning. It's done by a bacteria. It's a biogeochemical reduction process. So biochemical process, some bacteria working on some soil material under anoxic condition produce this arsenic, leaching this arsenic from soil into water, and that's what we're pumping out. The contamination level is 27 to 50% depending on who you read. People affected is 77 to 95 million people, probably more than that because now we have more tubules. And so this is kind of old statistics, I should say. This is almost like 10 years old now. So this is a public health crisis. I don't think this crisis has been addressed appropriately, either because we are not able to develop the technology or we don't have the money to solve this problem. So we just kind of ignored it. We are just saying that, kind of pretending that it's not there. This is done by other groups, and you can see 57% of the population is still exposed to arsenic poisoning, and you can see that only extremely small percent of the population gets piped water system. Whether the piped water system is potable, that's another question. But you can also see that arsenic removal units, which includes filter, is probably greater than the number of people served by the piped water. Okay, the crisis is all over the world actually. Specifically countries, I have listed here the 43 countries here, and they have in their water found more than 10 microgram per liter. So this is a global problem in the sense that if you use groundwater, if you're pumping out groundwater, the groundwater is already mineralized. Arsenic is one of them, but there could be other impurities which we are beginning to look into it. One is manganese, uranium, thorium, and other impurities. It depends on the geology of that country. One water supply, I get a lot of water from all over the world for analysis, and I found this water to be very interesting because this one it's from Peru and found 650 parts per billion of arsenic, and this is in their river water. So it is not only groundwater. You may get arsenic, high concentration of arsenic in river water if there are mines around it. So these are contaminated by mine tailings, which means they are mining, especially iron mine or gold mine can produce minerals that dissolves in water and produce high concentration of arsenic. Uh, well, as a scientist, you have to understand that not all arsenic species are toxic. The only arsenic species I'm talking about are the inorganic species. One, we call it arsenite and arsenic. Now, important thing about Bangladesh is that somehow the concentration of arsenite in Bangladesh water is much higher than arsenic. This is easy to remove by processes like reverse osmosis or filtration. This is neutral. This species is neutral. It has no charge. Therefore, it passes through membrane, and you need filters like iron-based filters which can remove these species. So, in that sense, the Sono filter has an advantage because we can remove both arsenite and arsenic. Well, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. One thing that you might have observed that in some tubules, like tubules which are like 200 feet apart, one has arsenic, the other one does not have arsenic. This is still a puzzle. It's not entirely clear why that is so, and maybe the geologists may have found something. But you may also find something like river water and lake water has no arsenic. That we know why. Even if you have arsenic soil has arsenic, river water and lake water has no arsenic because it is now exposed to air, and the oxygen in the air precipitated out the arsenic into iron containing minerals. So it is bound to iron containing minerals. So as you see that I'm talking about iron, it appears that iron is the key material both in terms of propagation of arsenic into geological strata. Also, iron is the key material to filter arsenic and other minerals from water, is for purifying water. So that's what I'm going to talk about now. Okay, water purification, there are chemical process and physical process. We should understand that chlorine is the primary chemical process, and chlorine may have saved millions of people all over the world, right? For decontaminating the water, but it also produced chlorinated hydrocarbon, and chlorinated hydrocarbon is carcinogenic. So that's why chlorine is not used in many advanced countries, because they found that they're getting chlorinated hydrocarbon. So in place of chlorine, other chemical species were developed, chemicals were developed, which are manufactured in industrial scale, like chloramine, ozone, and hydrogen peroxide. In the USA, they use ozone instead of chlorine. But if you use too much of ozone and water has chloride in it, Cl minus, it produces perchlorate and perbromate, which is toxic to 6 parts per billion. So now we have another problem when you try to clean it. So chemical process not only introduce chemicals in the water, it also converts other chemicals into toxic chemicals like perchlorate and perbromate. So the physical process would be best if we can filter it, for example, with membrane filtration like reverse osmosis, we know all about that. Or what I am interested in developing a new material called sorbents or adsorbents, a material that will absorb species and bind to that material permanently so that we can filter out all the toxic species. The third one is distillation, that's used to purify seawater. Okay, the nature by itself, I mean, we know the nature has some ways to decontaminate water, and I told you that river water does not have arsenic in it or other contaminants, inorganic contaminants. The one thing that we know in Bangladesh is saying that pani bashi kore khaben, right? So what is the utility or what is the significance of that? We did some experiments by leaving groundwater containing high concentration of iron and arsenic, and found out that if you have relatively high concentration of iron, to the extent of 5 parts per million, which is 5 milligram per liter, then you can decant that water when the iron precipitated out most of the arsenic from it. But it's not completely free from arsenic. So we really need a filter to reduce the arsenic concentration to the tolerable level, like less than 50 parts per billion. All right, so this is my interest, and interest is to develop absorbent material. And these are the adsorbent material. I call it sorbent because that's a common name, without identifying the chemical process, whether it is adsorption or absorption. Now, the first one in the list, we all know that it is activated charcoal. Activated charcoal filters out organic compounds and some microorganisms, but it will not filter out arsenic or other inorganic species, toxic species. Ion exchange material, resins and membranes, it will not filter arsenite, which is very toxic compared to arsenate. Then we have a material which is kind of mineral, alumina, ceria, and zirconia. And then the last one, which is now, a lot of people are studying this material. It's easy to make, and one can mix it with other materials and make filters. And this is what my interest is, iron oxide or hydroxide matrix. Okay, this is a reverse osmosis membrane. As you know, these are relatively expensive. You need electricity to pump water through a RO membrane, and then you have to change the membrane time to time to get clean water. Now, last many years I have been studying filter development as a science, and to study this as a science, we have 3 things to study. One is sorption, equilibrium, thermodynamics, which means we need to know the reactions. Without reaction, you really cannot, you don't know exactly what's going on. Then we need to understand how fast this reaction is happening. And then if we want to design a better filter, we need to understand the flow and mass transport through the filter. And that's the most critical part. And if we develop this kind of, if we understand it very clearly, which is not easy to understand by normal chemists, then we can develop a better filtration system. So I'll talk about zero valent iron and the composite iron matrix. We developed this material. The material comes from cast iron turnings, low carbon steel, high carbon steel. Through processing, we get, we call it granular composite iron granules, or from here we get composite iron matrix. In Pushtia, we produced this, the Mashuk, the non-governmental organization, produced about 50 to 100 tons per year, because there are about 10 kilogram of this material is in the sono filter. So that has to be processed and then placed inside the filter. So I'm going to show you, well, this material is not only used in the filtration system, a small-scale filtration system, but in the USA, this material is also used for filtration of industrial effluent by digging some hole here and put the porous iron here, and the industry is producing the toxic species, and when it passes through this membrane, permeable reactive barrier, it produces clean water. So many of the industrial effluent, especially organic and inorganic species, can be detoxified by this by the porous iron matrix. Okay, the filter may look like this. It does not matter how it looks, but look sometimes important, because that was our first generation is experimental filters. We published the results, and now in my lab in the USA, we are testing these inline filters. And this filter, for example, is filled with iron CIM, and then we are pumping water through it. The flow rate is not as high as normal normal filters that we use in house. These filters are made to make sure that we get clean potable water for drinking and cooking. So this is not yet suitable for bathing or other purpose. But the CIM, the material, is here, it is also here, or it could be here. For example, this is what the sonar filter looks like. It's a 2-bucket system. The active material is called the composite iron matrix. This is what we make in Kustia, also patented for to other places, for example, Turkey and Egypt. And then this is the active filter. Then this is the filter that making sure that if there is any leaching from this part here, it will be trapped here. So over many years, we tested this filter, making sure we want to understand exactly how it works. So we did some experiments. So I like to show you those experiments. This is the patent, and this is the composition of the material, the granular material, and we can see that it has manganese in it. So the manganese is added deliberately, or it can come from iron itself. Manganese is very important in terms of chemistry because it detoxifies arsenite to arsenate, and help remove the arsenic from water. Okay, this is how it looks like after many years. The iron binds to itself, and it forms a matrix, and that's what we call composite iron matrix. This is solid porous material, and 10 kilogram of this material will last many years. I'll show you how many years this filter or this material will last and continue to filter water. Okay, now these are some of the experiments that we have done in collaboration with the Swiss Institute. They came here in Kustia, and we did this experiment together. As you can see, there are outlets here. There are outlets. These outlets were used to collect water as we filter it, and we analyze this water. So you can see that the water here has high arsenic. At this point, the arsenic has decreased a little bit, and then as soon as it leaves this matrix here, the arsenic concentration reduced to 0, 0, 0 all the way. Now these are the filters tested. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 filters, 5 sets of data. So the theory that this material quantitatively absorb and remove arsenic is proven. Now this was done in 2000 when we are developing the filter, and this is kind of interesting in the sense that there are 4 tube wells. These are experimental wells containing 1600 parts per billion, 1000 parts per billion, and about 200 parts per billion. So when you filter this through the arsenic filter, the concentration of effluent arsenic reduced to below 14 parts per billion. The point here is that if we increase the amount filtered, the water filtered up to 25,000 liters, we can see that the concentration of arsenic decreasing. That means as you filter more water, the efficiency of the filter increases. And we know why that is so. And I'm going to show you one experiment that we have proven. So this is field experiment. Then with the laboratory experiment, we've proven exactly what's going on in this. Okay, I'm going to go over this relatively fast. As you can see, this is the test done after 7 years old filters. They're still running. And there are about 32 filters. And this is the concentration of arsenic they're pumping in, and the concentration of arsenic they're getting out. So the concentration pumping in between 50 to 610 microgram, and they're getting 8 plus minus 9, essentially 0 arsenic through the filtration process. The manganese, okay, we also measured manganese. The manganese concentration also dropped, as you can see here below the World Health Organization limit. One of the most interesting aspects of this filter is it quantitatively filters iron. So a lot of people buy this filter because not for arsenic, but to filter iron from water. We know that groundwater, shallow tubal water has a lot of iron in it, and a lot of people cannot tolerate iron in water. Now this is the test done by US EPA. During the Granger Challenge Prize, we had to submit 2 filters to them, and they tested those filters in their laboratory, and that's the result. Here you can see that's the influent water they're putting in is about 340 microgram per liter. So this is 340 parts per billion. This is milligram, convert that to parts per billion. And the effluent water is close to below the EPA limit. So we are very happy with the results. Including the iron concentration, they had 2 parts per million, and it came down to 8 parts per billion. These are all within limits. This is the result comparison of some of the filters tested by the ETVM project in Bangladesh, and you can see that the result shows that Sono filter stands out compared to other filters. Now, this is the test done by the Swiss Institute, and what they did, they tested the filter which is more than 8 years old. So I'd just like to show you that result. That's 8-year-old. These are the influent water arsenic concentration. Even after 8 years, the filters are working relatively well and reproducibly. This is working, they're producing clean water, and they're producing clean water over a long period of time. Some of the laboratory tests. Now, this is just like the cartoon in molecular scale. By molecular scale, I mean what's actually happening on iron surface. Now, we know that the iron, this is the metallic iron, right? And when iron is oxidized, we get rust. And the rust composition is basically you have oxygen, and the oxygen is bonded to hydrogen in different ways. You might get charge. If there's 1 hydrogen, there is no charge. If there's 2 hydrogen, you get positive charge. And when you have arsenic species, for example, this is arsenate with the oxidation state of 5. This is arsenite with the oxidation state of 3. So they both bind on the surface by replacing the hydrogen. So this binding is very, very strong. The equilibrium constant of this reaction is very large. So when they bind, it's very difficult to get rid of the arsenic. And this is exactly how the soil, iron in soil bind arsenic and other species. We have to understand that the soil has a lot of arsenic in it. It is one of the abundant element on the Earth's crust, but we don't have arsenic in our pond water or river water. That's because the soil binds arsenic, and this is how it binds arsenic to the extent that it's not leach off. In that sense, the material that we discovered, and also other people talking about, especially iron-based material, they're naturally we call green material because it's like soil. So once the arsenic is bound to this material, you can actually dispose this material in the open, just like soil has arsenic bound to it. Okay, just to show you, going through this relatively fast, how fast this arsenic is binding. It's binding relatively fast, as you can see, that we really cannot measure it within the time scale of the binding. So it's bound within 5 minutes. All the arsenic is bound, even if it is shorter than 5 minutes, because we really cannot measure it within 5 minutes. So the binding is fast. It has to be fast, and the binding should also produce a reaction that is also very stable. So you can see here that the reaction between the surface, this is the surface of the iron, and this is the arsenic species, it binds, and the equilibrium constant is very large. As we know, if the equilibrium constant is very large, then the reaction would go all the way to the right-hand side. There is no way this reaction can go in the left direction unless you add some acid or some very strong acid or basic species. Now, one thing that we need to study as a scientist is how this material is binding. Doing some laboratory experiments, we found that this material is changing as it binds. That means we call them isotherm. And isotherm, this is the experimental data, these are the theoretical data. It shows that it binds by increasing the surface area of the material. So as we filter more water, the surface area of the material is increasing. So this is 40 square meter per gram, 50 square meter per gram, 60 square meter per gram. So we can see the experiment does not go in this direction, but the experiment go in this direction, it tends to go in this direction. So which we conclude that this is due to the fact that the material is increasing its surface area as we increase the rate of filtration. Without going into details of the calculation, just like to show you this one, how long this filter, a normal filter that Mashuk is making and distributing, containing 10 kilogram of the materials, composite iron matrix. So if, let's say we have 300 parts per billion of arsenic, total arsenic in water, and I like to get 10 parts per billion out, and using it 80 liters per day. So if this is the usage rate, and this is what I want, and this is what I have in water, then how long it will take? The calculation shows that it is 11.4 years. Based on this isotherm, we calculate that the filter will last 11 years. Okay, so what happens? We reached 11 years, but some of the filters are broken because the plastic bucket does not last more than 5 to 6 years, and that's where the limitation is. All right, we have not been able to detect the 50 parts per billion breakthrough. The breakthrough means when the filter does not work, then you get 50 parts per billion. As soon as you get 50 parts per billion, then the filter has to be disposed or it has to be changed. We did not see that yet. So now the filter really lasts that long. Exactly why it lasts that long is not well understood until we have done this specific experiment. Now in this experiment, without going into the details of this experiment, I'd like to show you. This experiment requires a very sophisticated instrument. We call it atomic fluorescence spectrometer, because we have to measure extremely small concentration of arsenic to the extent that it's parts per trillion or sub-parts per billion level. So here is a column. We made this column. It's a column containing 1 gram of the CIM material, because CIM is very strongly absorbing arsenic. So you cannot break through this material unless we have very, very small amount. And then we have sand and sand on both sides, and pumping in water containing arsenic and other reagents, and measuring the arsenic concentration here. And the result looks like this. Okay, so this is the result. I'd like to mention this result. Now this result shows that starting with 0, and if you increase the concentration of arsenic, you start to see arsenic concentration goes up to 50 parts per billion. Then we stop the experiment, and then come next day, do the experiment again. So we can see that it did not break through next day. It starts almost at zero and goes up again, and so on. That means every day the material is regenerating itself. This is unlike any other material. If you leave iron, composite iron matrix for 24 hours or even less, then the material is regenerating and it's almost like a new material. So without that, this material will not last 11 years. That means the iron is rusting in a simple way. If I say in a simplistic way, the rusting process is very, very slow. And even with that slow rusting process, the material, regenerated material, is absorbing whatever arsenic coming in. So that's what happens until day 41. So this experiment lasted 41 days, and you can see at end of 41 days, this material is not regenerating as fast as it's in the beginning. Actually, it's dying basically. So this proves that this material is very, very tenacious in the sense that it takes up arsenic, it retains it, and regenerates it next day, and next day. These are some of the computational simulation, and I'll not get into that, but now all the studies are done. So what's done in the field? How we are making this filter, distributing it, and this is all done by Mashuk. Sorry. Okay, you can see that the Mashuk is making these filters in relatively large numbers, as large as it can make, and depending on the demand and supply and demand, and distributing it throughout Bangladesh. So this is how it's being distributed. The filter comes in 2 buckets, as you can see. There are 2 buckets, and each bucket also it comes with the stand. So there's a local industry where they make this steel stand, and of course we purchase very large number of buckets, as you can see. This is how it is distributed in the village. In Nepal, 1,000 filter is distributed, and the result is quite stunning, because I did not believe that there was arsenic in Nepal, but there's quite a bit of arsenic in Nepal. 876 parts per billion, the effluent is 5 to 10 parts per billion, 1 year 28,000 liter filter. So in Nepal they have a small industry making these filters. This is the filter in Nepal. You can see the people living in a hut, just 1 bedroom, kitchen and everything in 1 hut, and a filter there. This is in Bangladesh. Now this filter is 80 years old. We built a filter for a local pharmaceutical company. They found arsenic in their water, so this filter is kind of innovation in that sense that the filters are all arranged in parallel. Is it parallel? I think it's serial. So the water is coming in like that, and water is filtered out. Is collected here, then it is pumped into this stainless steel container with 700 liters per hour filtration, and then this water is now cleaned by reverse osmosis. One thing I should mention, that many places you cannot use reverse osmosis because the raw water coming into reverse osmosis is very poor quality, in the sense it has a lot of iron, calcium and magnesium, so the membrane is clogged. So the lifetime of the membrane is decreased because it has other impurities in it. So in a way, solar filter can be used to remove those impurities, including arsenic, and you can increase the longevity of the reverse osmosis membrane. So this is like a pre-filtration system. Let me see. Now, I'd just like to show you this. This was some data got on this particular study, April 2005, and they found 264 filters were examined for TTC, and 94% of the filter has 0 count, and only 6% has 2 counts of bacteria. So the filter removes bacteria. Now it's a fact that iron-containing material removes bacteria, especially coliform bacteria, and there are some patents already done by other people. So it's kind of proving the fact that's already known to other people. This was the test done by ETVM, and the interesting fact here is the influent water in Sono filter, 31 filters were tested on average. The influent water has 0 to 47 counts, quite high counts. The effluent water has 0 to 1 count. Comparison to Reed F filter containing cerium oxide, kind of advanced material made by Japan. The influent water has 0 to 1 count, almost none, and the effluent water has 1 to 88 count, average count was 16. That means the filter itself, the material inside the filter, is kind of acting like a nutrient for the bacteria, right? This is done by my colleague for studying if the filter can be used, if the material can be used to remove MS2 bacteriophage virus, and he found that it does remove bacteria virus after 10 minutes of incubation. The concentration of the virus goes down to 0. This is how many filters were distributed so far, 280,000. It's filtering 20 to 180 liters per day, and it's consumed for 2 to 10 years, and millions of direct beneficiaries, and the cost decrease as you increase the amount of water you filter, less than 0.001 taka per liter than estimate. This is what's going on in my laboratory. This is the new innovation I talked about. We are trying to develop inline filters using the CIM material. The testing facility in my laboratory in Virginia, and we are testing different types and different amount of CIM in the filtration system. Some of the results I like to show you, that these are synthetic water containing all the toxic or inorganic species you can think of, and the output water is relatively, except for iron, all the concentrations are below the EPA limit for the concentration of the species: chromium, cobalt, lead, selenium, cadmium. Now this is the filter that the group in Egypt is making. They are using this filter. They made a filter containing CIM. This middle inline filter has composite iron matrix, and they are filtering Nile water and also groundwater through it. And this is done in a community filtration system. We also made some advances in terms of making CIM, embedding CIM in fabric material. So these are tiny, small fabric material, and then we put some CIM in it. And because CIM is made of iron mostly, and we know that this material is active by bringing a magnet near to this material and they attract. So as long as there is attraction of the CIM material with magnet, you know that the CIM is active, which means it will. So this is a simple test to know whether the CIM has been expired. Now, taking this material inside this tube, you can pack it inside the tube and make a filter. These filters are relatively very light, and they can be used to filter very large concentration of arsenic. And we have a patent applied for this material. Well, I'm near the end. Basically, this is my last slide. I'd like to tell you about the new material that we are trying to develop. We call it functionalized material, functionalized surface. So what is functionalized surface? I mentioned that the rust iron material looks like that, and you have oxygen on the surface, right? So that's rust, basically. And then arsenic and other species bind to them, bind on the oxygen. But if we can bind hydrocarbon, there are ways to do that. We call it bonded hydrocarbon on oxygen. And a hydrocarbon chain like that, like C12 or C18 chain, then we have a material that will absorb organic species and also inorganic species. And this part is known to separation scientists for a long time, that if you bind hydrocarbon on a surface, you can separate organic compounds, toxic organic compounds, by this kind of functionalization. So this is what we started now, and we have done some experiment. I'm not going to show you any results of that, but the idea is that if you try to filter out alkyl benzene, then called BTEX, benzene, toluene, ethyl benzene, and xylene. That's what we have in our gasoline. And gasoline impurities, these are the impurities, especially in the USA, we are very wary about this material. So filtering it from water is a priority, and also other species. So you can see that benzene and ethyl benzene and other species will bind to this organic material. So this will be the universal filter material where we can bind inorganic species, organic species, and bacteria or virus that will, by its inherent ability for iron to kill bacteria and virus, this will be the universal material. So we are trying to get to this point, but it will take some time before we. I like to acknowledge Mashuk and Sono Technology and Research, and specifically my brother, Dr. Abul Kalam Muhammad Munir, my another brother, Professor Abul Barkat, Professor Abul Hussam Khan, who is my mentor in Bangladesh all the time, Zafrin Mizanur and Said, and George Mason, Center for Clean Water and Sustainable Technologies, Dr. Ahmed, Suan Rosadi, and Farhan. They have done a lot of work, especially those inline filter work done by these people. And the Swiss Institute of Technology, specifically Dr. Stefan Hagen and Dr. Anke Neumann, they came here in our laboratory in Kustia, did all the experiments, and some of the results I have shown is their results. So it's kind of proven that that this filter is working based on sound scientific principle. So that's about it. Thank you very much for your attention. Any questions?